Thanks for tuning in to OUTOFSCOPE, episode number 45. Yesterday, I spoke to Clayton Collier, senior editor at Metsmerized, one of the most popular New York Mets fan communities on the internet. And he talked to me about their loss, how important getting into the World Series was for Mets fans, how it changed the game for the Mets organization as a whole, and we talked about how social media has been really well done by MLB and the New York Mets and what's going to happen in 2016.
Sports marketing expert Brian Cristiano.
Brian Cristiano.
Marketers and advertisers and brands always have to keep in mind, you have to play to the state of your audience. Sports fans are arguably the most passionate people probably on the face of this planet. If you're not passionate, do something else. Well, Clayton Collier, thanks so much for being on OUTOFSCOPE. Pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here.
Well, awesome, man. For people that don't know what you do, you're the senior editor of Metsmerized. Give the audience kind of just a little idea of what you do and what Metsmerized is.
Well, Metsmerized is a fan site geared towards Mets fans, diehards. We've been going for a very long time now, and we're very happy after several years of things not going well and talking about what the Mets need to do, seeing it being put into place and seeing them making it all the way to the World Series. Although the result wasn't great in the Fall Classic, still an incredible year for the Mets, and a great year for us to be able to cover it all.
Yeah, I bet. That definitely, I'm sure, gave you guys a lot more things to talk about, and I'm sure it got your fan base a lot more excited.
Listen, with a New York team for baseball, there's never a shortage of things to talk about, whether it's good or bad, but I prefer to be talking about the good rather than the bad. It's probably a little more fun when it's bad. It's a little more hectic in terms of comments and in terms of and posts and what you're talking about. So, as both a Mets fan and somebody covering it, it's probably a lot easier to be covering it when it's good and a lot more enjoyable for sure.
Absolutely. Mets fans, sports fans in particular, I always say are some of the most passionate human beings on the face of the planet. I'm sure you can concur with that. Is that what you see with your site? I mean, obviously you need to have a super passionate fan base to have something as specific as a site for Mets fans.
Yeah, I mean, Mets fans are extremely passionate. You saw it this October. This is a fan base in the New York market that has been waiting to explode since they saw Beltran sit on the 3-2 curve. And you finally got to see them out there, in droves at Citi Field. I think you can base it off of the fact that the tickets got boosted up so much by third-party sites and everything. Just shows you how bad people wanted to get to the ballpark to finally see the team in the postseason.
By the way, I was in the stadium watching Beltran stare at that ball in that game end.
Yeah, I was watching it on TV, so I can only imagine how painful it was in there. But hey, Endy Chavez is a tremendous
catch
still. I'll still watch, the replays of that game, and I'm just like, it can't end after, like it did after Endy Chavez made that catch. I have a signed poster in my room that has the AIG, the Strength to Be There sign with Endy Chavez making the catch. It's one of my prized possessions.
That's awesome. It was a wild game. It was sad it ended that way, but this season was more exciting. And I want to touch on something that you just brought up, which was the secondary market in ticket sales. I had Steve Overmeyer on the show last week. We kind of touched on it a little bit, but that was after Game 1. Now, we're at the completion of the World Series. We know how it played out. Ticket prices were just through the roof. What was your take on why they were so more than the Yankees tickets on the secondary market, and almost twice as much as the Mets the last time they were in the postseason? What's your take on that?
I think it's a mix of the fact that the Mets hadn't been there in a while. I mean, the Yankees postseason game is pretty much synonymous with October typically. For the New York Mets, it doesn't happen too often. But also, if you look in their history, their postseasons outside of maybe 88 are typically not just one and done. There's some exciting games in there. There's some tremendous moments. So when you're watching a Mets playoff run, you're typically going to see something special. So I think that Mets fans know that, and they want to get out there when they can experience that. It's the first time in 10 years I think it drived it. Being in the New York market, you have so many fans trying to get into so big of a space, and Citi Field with standing room only probably gets up to about 44,000. So that probably was a big factor in driving it up.
Yeah, absolutely. with that said, we've seen how excited the Mets fans got, the ticket prices going through the roof, all of this because they made it into the postseason, made it into the World Series, in fact. How does that affect what the Mets, from an organizational standpoint, do next year? Both from, will they see ticket sales increase, season ticket sales increase? Will they see merchandise sales increase? Have they? And then from a player perspective, what happens to the big guys, the big payroll guys, and the smaller guys? Like, what happens from an organizational standpoint in 2016?
Well, I mean, the wheel isn't broken, so I don't know if you need to fix it necessarily. You have a tremendous core of starting pitchers. I mean, once you have Zach Wheeler in there, I'm going to argue that that's probably the best rotation in baseball. Maybe the Washington Nationals might have something to say about that next year, but you can't go wrong with what you have there. In terms of ticket prices, yeah, I'm sure they just made the World Series after several losing seasons. I'm sure they're going to boost up. Merchandise, I'm sure, will probably, it's already overpriced as is. It's $35 for a T-shirt here or there. I don't know how much further you can go up to that. But in terms of players, I mean, Daniel Murphy, Yoenis Cespedes are the big names coming off the books. You got to replace that offense somehow. Personally, I think you got to go out and you got to get somebody like a Ben Zobrist that can play multiple positions. You don't know what you're going to get out of David Wright. You don't know what Lucas Duda is going to bring you outside of his week-long stretches where he hits 9 home runs. So I think you're going to need somebody that can come in on a given day and platoon there. You got to have some pieces that are going to need to be added. You need some bullpen. So I think the Mets have to spend, coming off of a place where you can see what happens with these Mets teams when you give them the tools that they need to succeed.
Now let's take a step back and talk about Metsmerized for a second. We're talking about a place, a site where super fans, Mets fans can come and get information, opinions, all sorts of info and data and all sorts of great content for the Mets. From your perspective, working there as the senior editor, how important is it to, number one, create good content, whether that be going to the games and getting stats or creating opinion pieces or getting people to be a part of the site? And number two, how important is it to actually engage those fans, whether it be on Twitter, social media, etc., to keep them coming back and engaging with your site?
Well, for me, this past year, I was kind of taking more of the role of taking those interviews and creating stories out of them, just talking to different players and being able to get that kind of content, which is also unique. As a fan site, there's not an overwhelming number of blogs that have too much access to be able to get some of these interviews. So that's a great benefit that we have, that the Mets provide as well. For us, though, in terms of getting content as a fan site, fans are passionate. We've said that. There are certain things that you want to see or that you want to hear from a fan that you're not going to hear from a reporter. This guy's got to do, X has got to do Y. And so I think that, Joe D for Metsmerized, who owns the website, does a tremendous job with that. He has a ton of opinion. He's cranking out articles, sometimes 10, 15 times a day.
Wow.
Just to get posts out there. He really has put his heart and soul into the website to make it as popular as it has been. And he's a true embodiment of what a Mets fan is, and as well as hard work.
Yeah, and from what I understand, you guys, Metsmerized is one of the most popular fan sites in existence for the Mets, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly one of the go-to places for Mets opinions and news, and it's taken a lot of interest from fans, and the comment threads certainly can go crazy as well. It's really great to see how much it's progressed.
So looping back around to the Mets as an organization themselves, what can they do next year to engage their fan base even more than they did last year, or any ball club for that matter? But let's talk specifically about the Mets.
In terms of marketing, or in terms of getting players, or?
Both, right? Because I think it's in the way that I've talked about it, and Steve and I were saying it, a few episodes back, which is it kind of goes hand in hand. The players that you get dictate the kind of audience that you get, dictates, the marketing that you do, et cetera. It all kind of comes together. So I'm curious, from your perspective, who understands the organization, understands the game, the Mets so well, what can the Mets on any level do to engage their fan base even more? So more people are at games, more fans are wearing their gear like we've seen in New York the last few weeks where everybody's got a Mets hat on. How can they make that more prominent than they did in years past?
Well, I mean, it starts with winning, and now they've won, so now it's a matter of marketing themselves as a team that can be competitive as New York's team over, say, the guys up in the Bronx. Now that they have made it to the Fall Classic, there are guys that are coming out from the shadows of waiting to get onto the bandwagon. Now that they're on it, it's keeping them there. And so I think it's keeping the fans just engaged, keeping them involved, and making it more exciting to be at the ballpark. They do a great job in terms of the giveaways and everything like that. They have like the family Sundays, the free shirt Fridays, what the 7 Line does. They do a lot in terms of garnering fan interest, and I think that coupled with the fact that now they're winning, I think it'll prove pretty well for the Mets.
Do you think that social media, like some of the newer stuff, Twitter, I mean, it's old in a sense, but stuff like Periscope where you can live stream video, etc. Do you think a ball club really needs to pay attention and to utilize these tools to connect with their fans? Because the way that I'm looking at it is you have a fan site like Metsmerized where you're giving all of that extra attention and detail and information that you're not going to get from like an ESPN about the Mets. So that's why fans are going there, is for that extra level of engagement. Do you think utilizing some of these new tools, maybe even for yourselves, but the Mets specifically as a team, would help to get them, their fan base, to engage directly with players, to engage with the team as an organization?
Well, I think they do that. Their social media department is really second to none. I mean, the Snapchats, I think, are what MLB does with that, and I think the Mets are doing it as well, is really a great tool to make it very personal for you, because your list on Snapchat is just your friends, and then suddenly you have MLB that's showing you, Miguel Cabrera joking around with one of his teammates at the batting cage or something along those lines. Those are things that you don't even see when you're at the ballpark because you're 50 feet away from them. They're bringing you that much closer into the game, and I think that really helps get you that much more drawn in to a given team when you're seeing all the ins and outs like that. And I think the Mets do a really good job of bringing that out, whether it's on Twitter, Snapchat, Facebook, all the different social media websites that they use. They Periscope as well batting practice. I know they did that for David Wright's batting practice a couple times when he was on his way back. So it's stuff like that makes fans very interested.
Yeah, and from what I've seen, from what MLB has done on Snapchat and some of the other platforms that they're taking advantage of, it's been major. Have you seen, from what you've heard from fans, that they're loving it and engaging with the stuff that they're doing?
Yeah, I think MLB in general is very revolutionary with a lot of the different platforms they use. I mean, MLB Advanced Media is such a huge moneymaker now because the online content that they've been using, that they're selling to other sports. I mean, WWE uses it. They had a recent sale, I can't remember offhand, but they've had a number of major extensions outside of just MLB using that. In terms of social media, I mean, I do it myself when I go to the game. I try to take pictures of, a funny thing, like if Granderson had his batting glove, his glove on his head, or, different things like that. That are just these little things that fans really enjoy. It's amazing what'll go viral. I mean, I think I had Cespedes wearing his cap backwards, looking, angry at some point, and I think I posted that, and that went all over Twitter. It's the funniest random things that people will find unique and want to retweet and favorite and like, and it.
yeah, it's all about engagement. It's all about engagement at the end of the day, and you guys are doing it really well with your site. Any sort of prediction for 2016 for the Mets?
I think a lot of it will depend on what you see for what they do with the offense. I think, whether it's a Ben Zobrist or, taking a flyer on an Ian Desmond after a down year, it'll really depend. They obviously need bullpen help for sure, but they need to shore up some defense. They need to get that lineup back together here after you're losing Cespedes and Murphy. Many points, your 3 and 4 hitter in your lineup. But that rotation is going to keep you competitive no matter where you are. And this team has already been there for a year. So I think it's just a matter of putting pieces back together here for Sandy Alderson. He doesn't have to completely rebuild.
Well, let's see what they can do. I'm excited to see the 2016 season for the Mets.
Absolutely.
I'm sure you are too.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Clayton, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.